I'm the education coordinator for the Friends of the Sawtooth Avalanche Center, and really excited that y'all are here. As you just heard, we are going to record this meeting, and once I can figure out how to turn off everyone's captions here, I will do that, or like little video icons, I'll do that. And yeah, we're really excited to have Lindsay Mann here to give this presentation. And if you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. We'll either answer them as we're going, or we'll take questions at the end as well. Upcoming events that we've got for the Friends: on Saturday at Rotorun at 4 o'clock. We're gonna have a community avalanche safety day. We're gonna have some stations. There's no need to pre-register. Just show up. We'll be there from 4 to 5:30. We'll do stations, and from 5:30 to 7 there will be bonfires and free beer. And then on Sunday we have got our final Introduction to Avalanches field day of the season, and there's still spots in that. So if you'd like to do that, go on to sawtoothavalanche.com, click on Sunday's field day, and you will see a Google form there. If you can't figure out how to do that, if something's wrong with it, then just go ahead and send me an email at education@sawtoothavalanche.com, and we will get you signed up. So without further ado, Lindsay, take it away.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your lives and for being here tonight. I'm just going to do a little screen share. And I just want to put a little bit of a caveat in here. I know that we're all Zoom masters at this point, hopefully. But I do work as a mountain guide in my main life. I'm also a new mom, and I'm also instructor for the Friends of the Sawtooth Avalanche Center. I do my best with technology, but this is when I am most nervous, is on Zoom presentations like this. So I apologize if there's any tech stuff that I could maybe do better, but I'll do my best. And already, sorry, let me go back to full screen here. So again, thank you for joining tonight. This is an avalanche awareness presentation. This Know Before You Go presentation was revamped recently. So this is, if you've listened to an avalanche awareness presentation before, there's some new slides in here, definitely some new videos, a little bit different content. So if you're using this to refresh, or if this is new for you, hopefully there'll be some, new information in here, and at least a new face to this. Big thank you to all of these contributors on the screen here: Avalanche Canada, Utah Avalanche Center, Colorado Avalanche Center, Northwest Avalanche Center, National Avalanche Center. They all work together, plus many more great minds in the avalanche world, to get this presentation upgraded, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And then again, a big thank you to some of the sponsors that help make these avalanche presentations possible. Like Annie said, during this presentation, please feel free to put questions in the chat box as we're going along. But if anything comes up after in terms of questions or anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to education@sawtoothavalanche.com. So starting out, what is an avalanche? I would love for everyone to just take a minute and put in the chat and answer that question. What do you think of with an avalanche? Oh. So we've got one person saying that we need to have snow or snow falling on you. That is like one component that we for sure need to have an avalanche. Can anyone else think of other things that we need to have in order to have an avalanche? Yeah, so the common themes from the chat and that recipe for an avalanche is when we see an avalanche, we typically think of this picture on the right here. This is a slab avalanche, so those chunks of snow that are releasing, whether it's from a natural trigger or a human trigger or an animal trigger. The other things that we need in order to have an avalanche in the basic sense is we need a slope steep enough to slide on. And awesome, someone just put this, that's using an iPhone, put this in the chat. We also need unstable snow. So we need some sort of strong over weak layering or unstable snow. We need a slope steep enough to slide on. And we need some sort of trigger. Those are the three things that we need to have an avalanche. What an avalanche is basically, like all of you said, is snow sliding downhill. And there are different types of avalanches. There's different sizes of avalanches. Again, for me, all I know is that avalanches are something that I think they're really interesting to learn about. They're something that I do not want to be caught in, and I want to do everything I can to avoid that. And so by all of you being here tonight, that's a great step in making that happen, because the ultimate goal of any day in the mountains is to come home safely. So again, who is affected by these avalanches? It's anyone that recreates in the mountains: snowmobilers, snowshoers, Nordic skiers, sledders, and then people that live in mountain towns. If we lived by the ocean, then we would be listening to presentations on different ocean accidents and rip tides and everything that we need to be aware of the hazards of the ocean. Here, living in mountain towns, this isn't only for knowing about avalanches, isn't only for people that recreate in the mountains, but also for people that just live in mountain towns. As we saw earlier this week, a great example of that is that avalanche accident that natural avalanche that happened on Warm Springs Road and closed Warm Springs recently. A few statistics. In the US, we see about 27 fatalities per season from avalanches. These are a few photos of fatal avalanches. For people that might be traveling to Canada or Europe or outside of the continental US, we wanted to include some statistics on what that looks like in terms of how many avalanche fatalities people have in Canada per season in Europe. As you can see, Europe has about 3 times the amount of avalanche fatalities as the US. One of the reasons that might be is it's just a different culture surrounding the mountains. So there's a lot more people that are recreating in the mountains, and also avalanche terrain can be quite a bit more accessible in Europe, as well as the way that they control ski areas inbounds versus out of bounds is a little bit different than the way that we define it in the US. And so those all could be contributing factors. But for anyone that does ski or snowboard or recreate in Europe, I just think that's something important to know as you're going over there. And it's one of the reasons too that people commonly hire guides when they're traveling to Europe, is to help mitigate that risk of avalanches, since they do avalanche control work differently around ski areas. During this presentation though, the main things that we're gonna talk about and the points that we're gonna hit is getting the forecast, how to do that, where to do that, and the important things to look for in that forecast. Getting the gear, what gear should you be carrying in the backcountry with you if you are going? And like Annie said, getting to know your gear, those Friends of the Sawtooth Avalanche Center field days are a great way to even get to know your gear a lot better and get in the field and actually practice, touch that gear, and get coaching on that from avalanche professionals. Then we want to get the training. In there, we'll give you some more tools of beyond this presentation tonight. What are ways that you can continue to learn about avalanches? And then the final get the point is get the picture. So what does everything look like when we're in the mountains out there? How can we put all this information together? And what are some things that we really want to be paying attention to and observing and looking for when we're going out and recreating every day? So we're going to start with the get the point of get the forecast. Our forecasters here are amazing. They their job is to look at these different weather models, look into the snowpack, try and make on paper what's happening in the snowpack come alive through their forecasts. So I'm gonna play a short video for you about a little bit more about what avalanche forecasters do and what goes into making a forecast.
What up, buddy? We got you, buddy. We got you, buddy. We're right here. All right. We got you.
All right, so we're due north at about 8,200 feet here, Nikki.
And do you know the slope angle? You want to get a reading of that real quick?
In 2004, my dad and his two partners were actually caught in a pretty major avalanche here in the Wasatch Backcountry. All of them were caught in the avalanche and they all ended up with injuries. Being the person on the other side of the fence, it's pretty traumatic when your loved one is involved in an avalanche. That accident really propelled me forward into what I believe is my avalanche career now. You know, it's the people that don't understand the risk. That's what keeps me up at night. That's who I'm trying to reach. As avalanche forecasters, we're really focused on helping the public understand what they're going to face out there in the mountains. And we want them to go out and enjoy the mountains, have great experiences, and at the end of the day, come home back to their loved ones. Whether you're walking your dog, skiing, snowboarding, snowshoeing, snowmobiling, if you're heading out into mountains that have snow, you need to get an avalanche forecast.
The cool thing about forecasting is you're taking all of these different data points and all this really complex information and you're synthesizing it into something simple.
Did you these two in there?
Nikki, 80 is -2, 90 -3, so nice temperature gradient there between those two layers.
We're looking at observations from the public, professional users, observations that we personally get in the field. And what we mean by those observations is snow pit results, new snow instabilities, wind, weather, anything that's actually going on in the backcountry, recent avalanches.
This is 2 to 4 millimeter. It's near surface facets.
Then we're putting that all in together and we're trying to get one simplified bottom line statement for what's going on.
Avalanche forecasts can really come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Different centers might use a little different format. But the bottom line, all of us are focusing about on the same information across the globe. No matter where you are in the world, avalanche information is right at your fingertips. And that's going to be weather information, snowpack information, information about recent avalanches, and what the overall avalanche danger is in a mountain range.
When you first check the forecast, one of the first things you're going to see is that bottom line statement. In that, we're going to discuss the avalanche danger scale.
The avalanche danger scale consists of 5 ascending levels from low to extreme. Your chance of encountering an avalanche increases dramatically with each level.
So we've got this scale that discusses size and distribution, the likelihood, and then overall travel advice for the day. Beyond just the bottom line statement, we're going to see avalanche problems.
It's just really important to recognize that there's different types of avalanches. The avalanche forecast is going to give you that information, which ultimately you can use to make better choices in the mountains.
Things, you get the overall hazard, and then
An avalanche forecast isn't just done by one person. It's a huge team effort, not only by the forecast staff, but also by our local communities. What I find so special about the mountains is really the freedom and the friendships that you create out there. And it's my hope that other people can go into the mountains and experience the same joy that I do, and ultimately at the end of the day, come home safe.
And it looks like while we were playing that video, we had some new people join. So thank you if you just tuned in and are joining us tonight. So like we just saw in that video, is the avalanche forecasters are taking all of this information. They're taking weather modules into account. They're working as a team. They're taking public observations. They're taking guide observations and professional observations, and together they're coming up to create this forecast, which is a great tool for anyone to use. And I honestly think I would expand on what they said in the video. It's a great tool for anyone to use recreating in the mountains. I think it's also an important tool for anyone living in mountain towns to be looking at, because avalanches can affect road closures, they can affect businesses. And so again, even if you are someone or know people that aren't always going into the backcountry, it can be really great to read the avalanche forecast. So where do we find this tool? Well, in the US, you can go to avalanche.org. That's the starting point. And then you can see on this slide here, all of these colors that are highlighted, those are all forecasting centers in the US. And then in Canada, that's avalanche.ca. And for Europe, it's avalanches with an S.org. And same thing, all of those sites will take you to where the forecasting zones are for that country. And then you'll be able to click on, let's say you were skiing in Jackson, Wyoming for the weekend. Well, you can click on that forecast center and it's going to take you to that page to read all about the avalanche forecast. So these are all the jumping off points to getting to that forecast. Another really great tool to highlight on avalanche.org while we're talking about them is the education tab that they have there. There's a tool underneath the education section called the Avalanche Encyclopedia. That is a great place to learn more about all of the different terms that we use in the avalanche world. Or if you're like, you know what, I keep hearing people talk about remote triggering or this word, and that's something that I don't really understand what it means. I really encourage you to go to avalanche.org, click on that education tab and go to encyclopedia. I'll show you a few other tricks to figuring out some of the terminology. For us in this area though, we're with the Sawtooth Avalanche Center. And this is the face of what that website looks like for us. And so there's two ways that you can get to it. Again, you can start by going to avalanche.org or you can go directly to our page here, which is sawtoothavalanche.com. Like Annie was talking about, just to give you a little bit of rundown on the layout, is one of the headers there is education. If you click on education, and then you can look at upcoming events and classes. That's where you can register for these field days that she's talking about, or see any of the events that the Friends are putting on. Also likely where you found the link for tonight. So thank you. When you get there, you notice that there's several different forecasting zones. So for today, when I was, or from this screenshot, this is what it looked like. Sometimes those forecasting zones are going to be different colors. So if you're not sure which forecasting zone you're in for, you can search for the location here. Then one of the first things you're going to see, just like they talked about in the video, is you're going to see the date that the avalanche forecast was issued and that bottom line. I really encourage you to look at the date when you first see it. How current is this? And then you notice too that they do put out an expiration date on the forecast. And then they're going to give you that bottom line information. They're going to tell you what is the most important thing you need to know from this avalanche forecast. Hopefully you don't stop reading there. We really do encourage you to continue scrolling down and to continue reading what's in that forecast. For today, and this is today's forecast, the big thing that stands out to me from that bottom line is, one, they're saying conditions are dangerous. The other thing that they're telling us is that natural avalanches are possible, right? We just talked about what do we need to have an avalanche? Well, one of the things we need to have an avalanche is some sort of trigger. And they're saying one of the triggers for today when they issued this forecast is nature, is just, wind, snow being deposited. And so that is a big sign that, hey, we just want to be aware of the terrain that we're traveling in today. And then it's telling you how big we can expect to trigger an avalanche. But then at the bottom, you see this, it says avalanches may be triggered remotely. That is like a big warning sign to me, and then they define what that means. So they're saying avalanches may be triggered remotely. What that means is from gentler terrain above, you may be able to trigger an avalanche. From terrain below and to the sides of steep slopes. So that really stands out to me. And then if you scroll down, it's going to tell you what is the avalanche hazard at different elevations. One really nice thing now that the Sawtooth Avalanche Center is doing is they're putting in, and most avalanche forecasting centers are doing now, is they're telling you what does upper elevation mean, middle elevation, and lower elevation. Because as you can see, sometimes the avalanche danger varies by elevation. We've already seen, right, that colors are associated with, that's that North American danger rating scale. Again, this is something that's worth getting to know and getting a little bit more familiar. What does high avalanche danger mean? And what is the travel advice for that? So for high avalanche danger, it's saying that very dangerous avalanche conditions recommend. Travel in avalanche terrain is not recommended. Well, what's the likelihood an avalanche could happen? Natural avalanches are likely, human triggered avalanches are very likely. And then the size, large avalanches. So there's a little bit more meaning behind the color. And another thing that we really want to emphasize about this danger rating scale is it increases exponentially. It's not like moderate is just a little bit higher than low. It's an exponential increase as you get up. And just so starting to get to know a little bit more about the meaning behind these colors is pretty important. It also is really important because all of this is based on, and you see right in extreme, it says avoid all avalanche terrain. Well, knowing what avalanche terrain is really important. So to define avalanche terrain, and you may hear me say this a few times throughout this presentation because it is super important, is anything above 30 degrees that's steep enough to slide. And so that is avalanche terrain. And the other thing with avalanche terrain is we do want to be aware of what's above us. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the picture point at the end. But to give you a little preview of what's coming up is avalanche terrain is anything that's above 30 degrees. Most avalanche fatalities and avalanche accidents happen in moderate and considerable hazard. And so again, that's what we have going on right now with our snowpack. So be a little bit aware when you see that. That should make you think, okay, most accidents happen in moderate and considerable. So this is a time where I need to have some avalanche decision-making tools. And if you look under travel advice too, when it's considerable, it says cautious route finding. And remember, if there's ever any question or you're not sure if you have those skills, then skiing something below 30 degrees can be a great way to just take that out of it. And or maybe it's a day that you decide, you know what, going in the backcountry today isn't for me. I'm not there yet with my decision-making skills. Like we said too, avalanches can come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and there's different types of avalanches. And when you're looking in the forecast, as you scroll down and you go below that hazard rating, the avalanche forecasters are going to give you even more information. So the next piece of that avalanche forecast that we want people to be looking at and starting to understand is looking at what are these avalanche problems. This is from today's forecast, March 2nd, is the primary avalanche problem that they were talking about was wind slab. And then there is a secondary avalanche problem that they mentioned as well, and that is persistent slab. So underneath both of these, they tell you what the problem is. They also tell you where it's located. So on what aspect, what elevation. That's what this compass rose is showing you here. So for the wind slab problem, they're saying that it's located at all aspects, but only at upper elevation. And upper elevation is described as above 8,500 feet. It's also going to tell you the likelihood and roughly how big that avalanche would be if you were to trigger it. Same thing with the second avalanche problem that they were describing today, is they're going to tell you what the problem is. For this problem though, you can see the difference on the compass rose. This problem is located at all aspects, but at middle and upper elevations. And again, if you compare the likelihood, it's a little bit bigger size that they're forecasting. But they're saying wind slab, that avalanche problem is likely. For this one, it's possible. So these are a lot of, different things, but really they're going to explain and talk about in the text below exactly what they're thinking with this. Sometimes the forecasters even tell you this is the terrain we recommend avoiding for this problem. Their language just depends every time. But what's really great about today's forecast too is with both of them, they had some pictures of avalanches that people or forecasters saw from the field recently. And they include that in here and they explain their thinking here. So for the wind slab problem, it specifically mentions the warm spring avalanches. So that's like the mountain screaming in our face, right? Is there were avalanches that were happening based on this problem. So this is something we want to be paying attention to. And again, dialing back that terrain because it is likely that we can trigger a wind slab avalanche. So how can this help you? I just gave you a ton of information. The basic piece that we hope you take away from reading the forecast is 1, look at the date. When was that avalanche forecast issued? 2, read everything that the forecasters are telling you. Really, we encourage you to scroll down and not just read the bottom line, but read all of that text. There's some really great information in there. And again, if you have any questions too, right next to all of these different terms, this gray circle with the white eye in it, if you click on that, it's going to give you more information on what avalanche problems mean. And just like if I went into any of your jobs, I'm sure that there's jargon and words that I wouldn't understand. That's the same thing, is that reading the avalanche forecast, it just takes practice. And so we've got those information buttons in there to help you get practice interpreting what does that mean to help build your knowledge to speak this language. And then also the forecasters do the best job they can to clearly explain, you know, this is what's going on and what we're seeing out there with all the information that we've gathered from these different sources. So I'd like to just take a pause here for a minute. And if there's any questions that people have on the avalanche forecast, I'll do my best to answer 1 or 2 questions now before we move on to the next get the point, which is get the gear. Feel free to put them in the chat if you have any questions. So someone's got a great question here, and so I'm actually going to go back a few slides. Just asking to clarify this compass rose, this aspect and elevation chart. So this is just anything that's highlighted in gray here. They're telling us that is where the persistent slab problem is located. So for today, what the forecasters are trying to tell us with this graphic is northwest, north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, and west, all of those aspects. There's a persistent is where you could find the persistent slab problem, and at middle and upper elevations. And so for our forecasting zone, what is defined as middle and upper elevations is middle elevation is 6,500 feet. Upper elevation is anything above 8,500 feet. So this problem's located on all aspects at any elevation above 6,500 feet. So for me, the way that I interpret that into the field is that if I were to be going out in the backcountry today, or knew that I was going to be above 6,500 feet, I would want to be pretty aware that any terrain I go in that is above 6,500 feet, that persistent slab problem is likely to be there. And so the way that I can avoid that problem is to either stay in lower elevation or to stay out of avalanche terrain for that day, depending on where my decision making is and what skills I have. But that avalanche problem of that persistent slab is going to be located above 6,500 feet on all aspects and all elevations. First, that wind slab problem, if you compare that to here, that's also located on all aspects, but only the forecasters are telling us they only expect to see that problem above 8,500 feet. Great question, Nick. Well, if anyone does have any questions, other questions on that, please feel free to put that in the chat and we'll come back to that at some point in this presentation. But now that we've gotten the idea of what is the forecast, what are the forecasters do to try and give us and relay information, the next thing is, as we're going out into the field, we want to be carrying certain gear with us. What is that gear? Why is it important? And a basic rundown of how it works. Again, this is where those Friends of the Sawtooth Avalanche Center field days are so valuable, because you are actually going to get to touch this essential gear and you're going to spend time being coached and learning more about how it works and getting that hands-on experience. But this is going to give you an overview of that gear. And basically we're going to look at, so if there were to be an avalanche, there is basic safety gear we want to be carrying. How does that gear work? What do we need to know about it? How can we practice with it? Ultimately though, hopefully we are never in this situation, but because we are carrying this gear and because our backcountry partners, they are our best chance of being rescued if we were to be caught in an avalanche, we do want to make sure that people and our partners especially and ourselves are practicing with this gear. So I'm going to play another quick video talking about avalanche gear, and then we will fill in some more gaps that we have after we watch the video.
As cut off here, so there's no feeling below that.
This isn't your script, but I feel like there is so many new users to the backcountry. It scares me. It scares me that everyone thinks I just buy this expensive gear and I can get on the chairlift and I'll be fine. Get the gear, but get the education, understand how to use it, and have solid backcountry partners.
I'm worried about storm slabs in alpine and tree line on all slopes.
Sawtooth Avalanche observed yesterday on the parkway. Wind styles expected on all aspects.
The reality is, backcountry is getting busier and busier. There's just more and more people out there. So with that comes a higher level of risk.
We've all heard a lot of stories about people who didn't even have a beacon on, or no shovel, no probe. And that would have been the thing that would have saved them.
Gotcha.
The bottom line is in the backcountry, it's fun. And the accessibility to that terrain is so incredibly easy that there can be a misconception that it is a safe place to be.
There are going to be times that you can open it up, you can have that risk tolerance on those big lines, and then there's going to be times that you're going to have to rein it in.
You're going to make hundreds of decisions that are very important to your life. And unfortunately, one decision, one bad decision, can ultimately end the whole thing right there.
It is a really pretty helpless situation to be in if you don't have the right tools.
There's really no outside help. You know, it's really up to their partners to get to them as quickly as possible and know how to use a transceiver, a probe, and a shovel, use it well, and dig them out of the snow. In a full burial, your heart's beating and you don't know how long you're going to be riding it out for and how much oxygen you're eventually going to have. Time is of the essence. I would want to know when I'm going to the backcountry that I have a solid partner and they're super familiar with using that equipment.
We're right here. We got you.
If you've been in an avalanche and someone's buried, that's where having the gear and knowing how to use it can make all the difference in the outcome.
All right, another great video. So this next point is get the gear. So the 3 essential pieces of gear that we always hear talked about is avalanche transceiver, avalanche shovel, and avalanche probe. In reality, I think to just build on the get the forecast point that we just went over as well, is that get the forecast, that's also an essential piece of gear, is making sure that we're reading that forecast before we're going in, having communication devices. I think there's more and more that we can add into it, but in the basic sense, if we're going in the backcountry or out of bounds at a ski area or interacting in and around avalanche terrain, we want to be carrying an avalanche transceiver, shovel, and probe, and we want our partners to be carrying the same, because if we were to get caught in an avalanche, or if our partners were to get caught in an avalanche, we are backcountry ski patrol. We are their best shot at getting rescued. So these avalanche transceivers, the way that they work is they send out a signal, and they're also able to receive a signal. Any brand of avalanche transceiver works with other brands. So for example, a Mammut avalanche transceiver, which is the brand that's pictured here, that will work with a BCA avalanche transceiver. They're both going to speak the same language. They're both going to be able to find each other, and they're both going to be able to pick up each other's signals. The way that we want to be wearing this piece of avalanche equipment is avalanche transceivers find other avalanche transceivers. So we want to make sure that these avalanche transceivers are attached to our bodies so that we can find the people attached to their bodies, or find the people attached to the avalanche transceiver. So best way to wear this is in that harness that it comes with over a base layer, so that as you're switching layers throughout the day, you don't need to move where that avalanche transceiver is. If anyone's a snowmobiler out there, it's especially important too that your avalanche transceiver is on you and all of this gear is attached to you in a backpack or whatever. So best practice is wearing that avalanche transceiver in the harness that it comes with. You can also wear the avalanche transceiver in a pocket that is part of the pant, and usually backcountry pants, some of them will come with a specific pocket, which has a pocket inside of a pocket and an attachment point that the avalanche transceiver can go in. If you're unsure if your pocket works or doesn't work, then I would strongly advise to go with wearing it in that chest harness over your base layer. A few other things that are important to know about these pieces of gear is we want to use name brand batteries with them. So this isn't a time to be like, you know what, I'm going to use that Kirkland battery or that Costco brand of battery. No, this is a life-saving device. We want to use that Duracell, that name brand, that Energizer battery. We also do not want to use rechargeable batteries. Rechargeable batteries, they tend to, say that they're 100% and then all of a sudden drastically drop off. Where we eat up the most battery power using these devices is in the search mode. So we want to make sure that they have appropriate battery power. What that battery percentage is, every manufacturer recommends something slightly differently, but a pretty good rule of thumb is having that battery percentage over 60%. A great resource to learn more about avalanche transceivers, and I'm going to put this in the chat, is a website called beaconreviews.com. It has the user manual and it has different reviews on all avalanche transceivers. So if you're looking to buy a new avalanche transceiver or looking to learn more about your current avalanche transceiver, that is a great resource. Another thing that we want to be aware of with avalanche transceivers is they do electronics do interfere with avalanche transceivers. There's this new graphic that Avalanche Canada, Utah Avalanche Center, the US National Avalanche Center, Northwest Avalanche Center, and different manufacturers, BCA, Black Diamond, Mammut, Ortovox, among other people, worked to come up with and design to make this really simple. is this graphic here. So this is new and it came out this winter, and you may have seen this. It's been floating around on social media a lot. People have been talking about the 2050 rule. And basically what the bottom line is that electronic devices, metal objects, and magnets of any kind will interfere with your transceiver signal if they're too close. So this 2050 rule is when we are in send or transmit mode, we want to have any phones or any electronics at least 20 centimeters away. When we are in search mode, that distance gets longer. Then we want any electronics or any of those devices that can interfere with our avalanche transceiver to be 50 centimeters away. So there are some really great graphics here. If you search avalanche transceiver interference, this graphic comes up now, and it's a really great, easy resource. But try and keep in mind that 2050 rule. Along with that avalanche transceiver, so if someone were to be caught in an avalanche, the first thing that we would do is we would use our avalanche transceiver to search for that person, have the numbers get lower, and the avalanche transceiver is going to bring us to that lowest number. And then the next piece of equipment that we're going to use is this probe. So it's basically like a really big tent pole that you throw out. There is a locking mechanism that you pull this, you wiggle and jiggle, you pull that, and it's going to lock those pieces together. And then you're going to actually put that probe in the snow to try and pinpoint that person and hone in that search from those lowest numbers that your avalanche transceiver. Once you feel something different, so the way that we know that we've got a positive probe strike is, one, we've just used our avalanche transceiver and we've gotten that lowest number. Then the next thing is we've pulled out that probe and that piece of gear. And when we put that probe in that snow, we're going to know that there's something different because, one, it's going to feel different, but two, it might be a little bit shallower too, and our probe's not going in as far. And that's another indication it's that person. And then once we have that positive probe strike, we want to keep that probe in the ground, and then we're going to start shoveling. Shoveling is actually the piece that takes the longest, as you can imagine. The average burial depth for a person caught in an avalanche is 1.5 meters. And so that takes moving a lot of snow. And when we teach avalanche courses and even do avalanche awareness training with this gear, we talk a lot about different ways and techniques that you can be efficient with your shoveling, because this takes the longest. It's really important with that shovel that it's a metal shovel. Again, this isn't a piece of gear that we want to save weight on. We want to get a good metal avalanche shovel. Avalanche debris is most similar to the plow debris, those like firm, hard snowbanks that we've got all over town right now. But really firm. And so that is, one, a great place to practice shoveling to get that feel of what avalanche debris feels like. And it's also a great way to know, is this shovel working? You know, if your shovel can withstand that, then that's a pretty great shovel for the backcountry. So we want to have all three pieces of these gear, because one alone isn't going to help us find that person. It takes all three pieces. That avalanche transceiver is going to hone us in, and there's a systematic way that we want to search with the avalanche transceiver to get the numbers lower. Then we're going to pull out that probe. We want to make sure that probe is locked, and then we're going to be feeling in the snow perpendicular to the slope. Again, there's a systematic way that we want to be probing to make sure that we get that positive probe strike. And then once we get that positive probe strike, we're going to leave that in the snow, and then we're going to start shoveling. And again, shoveling is the piece that takes the longest. And ultimately, we want to make sure we're practicing with this gear too, because we're trying to get to this person that's buried underneath the snow within 10 or 15 minutes. That's their best chance of survival statistically. Besides those three important pieces of gear, There's a lot of other gear that we can carry with us in the backcountry. One piece of gear that has become very popular is avalanche airbags. These can be a great tool. Basically, just like you see here, Holly's got her airbag pack inflated, and it comes out and it's like this big giant neck pillow. And the idea behind this piece of gear is that it is going to help you stay on the surface if you were to be caught in an avalanche. In order to get that airbag pack inflated, Holly had to pull her handle, and then this inflates, and then hopefully she's going to stay on top of that avalanche airbag. Places where these might not work as well as if there's lots of trees or rocks or things that could puncture this airbag. Although people have been doing in different companies now, some of these airbags, they like pulse back and forth so that they're trying to do their best to stay out of, to not get punctured and to stay inflated. Again, a downside to this too is that you do have to pull your airbag. And if you do have an airbag pack, I actually really recommend practicing knowing where is that handle. It's meant to be pulled across your body and down, but just knowing where that is and touching that as you're skiing. So worst case scenario, if you did have to pull it, you know where it is. Other pieces of gear to think about is, again, warm layers. If someone were to be caught in an avalanche, or even if just something goes wrong in the day, having those extra warm layers to keep yourself warm can be really important. Extra gloves, thinking about what if something were to break? Would that extend my time in the mountains? What can I deal with? Those Volet or Titan ski straps can be amazing to repair things with. I know personally they've gotten me out of a lot of pinches. And then also thinking about having some sort of first aid kit, different communication devices, maps, and obviously food and water. And just to add on that too, also in those field days, we tend to go over what is in our backpacks, what are we carrying, so that you can get a good idea, because sometimes it can feel like you should be carrying everything in the kitchen sink. And our instructors have a really good idea of here's some basic things that you want to carry that are going to help and go a long way. So about a third of people that are caught in avalanches are killed because of trauma. The other 2/3 of people that are caught in avalanches, those are people that are that are buried in avalanches. Sorry, let me start over on this one. It's not a third, about a fourth of people, 25% of people that are caught in avalanches are killed by trauma. The other 3/4 of people, so the other 75% that are caught in avalanches are buried. So those are the people that we can use that avalanche equipment to try and find. And again, it's your partners that are going to help find you. So if you're going in the backcountry, if you own this gear, if your partners own this gear, it's really important that you're practicing with this gear. It is a perishable skill, so we want to practice with this. And this is a little bit of a sobering quote, that gear can find your body, but partners can save your life. So again, hopefully the people that you're regularly going out in the backcountry with, you are also practicing with. We are so lucky here that we have 3 local beacon parks. One of them is at the top of Baldy, but the other 2, you do not need a lift ticket to access. So Atkinson's Park in Ketchum, there's a beacon park there that went in, 2 or 3 years ago, I think, but it's pretty new. It's awesome. It's a great resource. We're so lucky that it's located in town. Obviously, another spot is Baldy, like I mentioned, so at Sun Valley Resort, and then out at Baker Creek parking lot. So there's 3 different places. Go out, practice, do a lap. Do make sure though that you read The instructions and these signs that you're seeing at the Beacon Park, this one here that's pictured, this is from the Atkinson's Park Beacon Park. It's going to give you, and it tells you training instructions. One thing that they usually ask is please do not dig up the buried beacons. So make sure that you're figuring out ways to practice that shoveling too. But doing a couple laps and getting more familiar with equipment, these are amazing tools, and it's a great way to get that practice in. So before I move on to get the training, I'd like to do the same thing. And if anyone has any questions to put in the chat, and then we'll move on to the next get the point, which is get the training. So this is a really good question. We get into different probing techniques in both avalanche awareness field days that the Friends are hosting this weekend. Like Annie mentioned too, also at Rotorun, we'll have a station on gear so that we'll talk about some of the basics of these too. But the most efficient angle to probe is we want to be probing perpendicular to the slope. That's a great question. Thank you, Nathan. So we're going to move on to get the training. So I'm going to play another video.
And this whole big chute went down to the valley floor. Yeah, I must have been 19 or 20, and that was just as we were starting to leave the ski hill into the backcountry. And I still remember it was a moderate, low hazard day. And it had just snowed a little bit, and then the wind really kicked up. My friend just did a big ski turn right above me and popped a slab. And I remember it wasn't even big, and I was like, I'll just hop over this moving snow. But it totally grabbed me, and I was doing the full ragdoll down the hill. I had managed to grab onto a tree and stop myself. As the avalanche went down in the gully, it pulled out the whole rest of the bowl, and this whole big chute went down to the valley floor. If I would have been in that, it would have been terrible, yeah. I was so keen at that point in time and really didn't know what was safe and not. That avalanche was definitely a bit eye-opening to how quickly things can go wrong in the backcountry. I got lucky, but unfortunately, a lot of people do not. With a little bit of avalanche training, a lot of accidents can be avoided. Looking at the bulletin, it's been warm yesterday and then cooled down quite a bit overnight. Probably the main concern today would be the wet and loose on the sunny aspect. If anybody has the motivation to go out into the backcountry, whether that's skiing, sledding, riding, I would say an entry-level avalanche course is totally critical. That'd be perfect. Your general entry-level avalanche course will have fundamental knowledge about avalanches, how snow and layers and snowpack work. We're just looking for a good site for a profile. Let's dig. Typically, you do a little bit of avalanche rescue practice, so you get your transceivers out, probe, shovel, and the beacon just comes down to the knee, and you just move forward. Practice with that gear so that you know what to do if something were to go wrong. That's it. A little bit about trip planning, reading the avalanche hazard bulletins, and then sort of picking a suitable trip. You'll do a little bit about traveling through avalanche terrain. The number one problem of the day was the wet loose avalanches, which is what's raising the avalanche hazard for the day. We've got a little one starting. That's a good indicator of where things are going. Well, the mountains and the snowpack can feel quite complex at times. The sort of entry-level avalanche courses give you some fundamental knowledge that allows you to maybe make sense of some of the things that you're observing out in the mountains. And that fundamental knowledge can be useful to avoid avalanche accidents. I personally couldn't imagine a life without skiing and climbing in the mountains. It just gives you so much vitality in your life, which is awesome. With anything, to be a master of your craft takes a lot of practice and a lot of time, and it's an ongoing sort of lifelong learning process. I've been working with avalanches for 15 years now, and I'm still learning every day.
So I do see that there's a new question in the chat. Let me just get my screens sorted here. And then I do want to answer that because that's a great question. So what was asked in the chat that I do want to address before we move on to get the training was just, are airbag packs reusable? And so there's a couple different types of airbag packs now, and some of them are battery operated. And so you usually get, I want to say roughly maybe 3 or 4 charges per battery when you pull it. So one way is battery, and they're reusable, and then the battery just needs to be charged, and you get about 4 pulls about per that battery. The other way that some airbag packs are is there's CO2 canisters in it. And so in that case, then you do need to just refill the CO2 canister. Those tend to be more difficult to fly with if you're flying different places. So they are reusable, and it is definitely just worth looking into what type of system that airbag pack is, so that you have more information before you buy this, expensive piece of equipment. So getting back to avalanche training, avalanche education is great. It's really important. Obviously, all of you, by being here tonight, this is a great step in your avalanche education, whether this is the first time you've heard this presentation or you're coming to listen to it again, because I think it's so important to listen to these presentations more than once, because there's a lot of things that you can pick up on or good reminders for you. So some things that you might learn in an avalanche class, in that Avalanche 1 course, like they talked about in the video, they're going to give you more tools to look deeper into the forecast. They're going to give you some more tips on rescue, but really helping out with, route planning and some of those basics there. So that is going to and recognizing avalanche terrain. Like I've talked about a couple times, and we're going to get into it more, is recognizing what is avalanche terrain, what terrain we choose each day when we're going out. That's the piece of the puzzle that we have the most control over. And so those are some things that you'll learn in that basic Avalanche 1 course. Other resources, and there's so many cool ways now to get avalanche education, is, again, if you go to that the Sawtooth Avalanche Center, so sawtoothavalanche.org, or .com, and you click on that education tab, they're going to tell you about all the opportunities in the Valley. So we've got presentations like these today. There's also some recorded presentation. There's the Digging Deeper series. So you get to interact, hear from local professionals, from the avalanche forecasters themselves. There's a variety of topics in those Digging Deeper series. Another really great resource too is the Know Before You Go platform. And so they have some more different tutorials that you can do online that you can sign up for. What this is tonight, like we've talked about, is in the awareness level. And then beyond that is the recreation level 1 is a 3-day course. Then there's a standalone avalanche rescue course, and then there's a recreation level 2 course. And all of those courses are going to focus on expanding your toolbox for decision-making tools and for also avalanche rescue. So this final get the point that we're going to talk about is get the picture. And so far during this presentation, we have talked about getting the forecast, we've talked about getting the gear, and we've talked about getting the training. Getting the picture is, what are we doing when we're out there? How can we make that forecast come alive? We're carrying the gear, we've taken some classes. In that get the picture, we're going to talk about what are some tools that when you're going out, you can start looking at what is avalanche terrain, so you can really avoid getting caught in avalanches. And one thing too, and I might again say this more than once because it's just so important, is I was talking with Ethan Davis, who he's one of our local forecasters here this morning. And one message that he really wanted me to pass along tonight is that over this past week, we've gotten a lot of snow. We've gotten a lot of wind. Avalanche conditions have changed recently in our forecasting zone, in our area. These forecasting zones are big, so we always want to just be aware when we're going out. And also right now, it's a lot colder than it can be often at this time of year. So going into this weekend, just have your eyes open, be getting that picture, be looking around, be reading that forecast, so that we are choosing terrain that's appropriate for the hazard that we currently have. And it's changed a lot in this past week. So most of us that are guides were just stepping back a little bit with our terrain. So with that, I'm going to play another video. This is our final video in the get the point, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into the get the picture.
Avalanche terrain is simply terrain steep enough to shred.
Reality is that the fun places in the backcountry are the places where avalanches are possible. It only takes one bad mistake to
Avalanche, killed in an avalanche.
To lead to a lot of pain for a lot of people.
In order to safely travel in the backcountry, you need to understand the bigger picture. Firstly, you need to recognize avalanche terrain and how to safely travel through it. Secondly, you need to constantly observe the ever-changing conditions.
Welcome to the final chapter.
It's really important to understand that the second you step in the backcountry, you're going into terrain that hasn't received any active avalanche mitigation.
It's important that you can recognize avalanche terrain. By definition, avalanche terrain is any slope steeper than 30 degrees.
No one can be a perfect avalanche forecaster. Snow science is an inexact science.
When you look at the forecast in the morning and make that assessment, you have to be prepared for the fact that the conditions could actually change during the day.
The one constant is terrain, and what we can do is position ourselves with best terrain practices through it. So you think about moving through the mountains, there is safe zone to safe zone, and it's those best terrain practices that set us up for success. We're all going out as a group for the A objective, but along the way, we may have some sort of weather characteristic that changes that decision.
It's really helpful to just have some big red flags that are telling you it's time to reevaluate. And those things are rapid snowfall, rapid wind, shooting cracks, whoomphing, recent avalanches, or rapid warm-up.
We've just moved to the trees, and at this point, wherever we go is avalanche terrain. In order to minimize our exposure as a group, we're gonna go from safe zone to safe zone, moving one at a time through this terrain.
Having guidelines are very effective ways to give yourself a framework where you're less inclined to make emotional decisions that could be bad ones.
Just like on the way up, we're gonna expose one person at a time on this slope. I'm about to drop in. Do you guys have eyes on? Yep. Awesome, let's do that.
Dropping in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
The skill set to safely travel in the backcountry is something that's achievable by anybody. It's important that you dedicate yourself to understanding the basics.
So you've got the gear, you've got the training, you've got the forecast, you've got the picture. Let's go get the goods.
Great, so getting a little bit deeper into this, get the picture here, is there are some things we want to be looking for and paying attention to every time we're going out in the field. And so that first step, like we've talked about a few times now, is what is that avalanche terrain? So avalanche terrain is anything over 30 degrees. So how do we know what is 30 degrees? There's a couple tools that we have to measure slope angle. So one of them is an inclinometer. And so actually going out, putting a pole down on the snow, what does that 30 degrees look like? That can be a great way to like calibrate your eye, doing that inbounds on slopes to getting to know, okay, what does 30 degrees roughly look like? Typically 30 degrees is usually a blue or black run inbounds. So that can also be a good way to start thinking about it, but really measuring it because as you know, blue runs vary from ski area to ski area. There's also different apps out there. So this is one app that has an inclinometer as a part of it that's called Theodolite. It's a pretty cool app to play around with if that's something that you're interested in. And then there's some other different apps and mapping tools. So one, just looking at a topo map and getting familiar with what is that spacing that's about 30 degrees. Or another way too is there's different mapping apps. This is taken from a screenshot in a program called CalTopo, which is both a desktop tool and an app that you can have on your phone. And they have this slope shading that you can add to topo maps. And as you can see at the bottom here, anything 30 degrees and over, that's that orange to red, and then really steep is purple. But anything that's yellow, that's right on the cusp of avalanche terrain. So using a combination of these tools, so there's some that you can be looking at home before you're going in the field, and then some different tools like an inclinometer that you can be measuring slopes when you're in the field. And again, just starting to get familiarity with what does that 30 degrees kind of look like. So you're starting to get that sense, right? This photo on the left here, obviously an avalanche happened here. This is 30 degrees and above, obviously up here. But this terrain below, this low angle terrain, is likely not 30 degrees. That's below 30 degrees. But we do want to be aware of what terrain is above us. Versus if you look at this photo here of the snowmobilers, not 30 degree terrain. And additionally, there's no big steep terrain above them. So those apps that I just mentioned, I'm going to put in the chat. Theodolite is one of the apps. And then a great mapping tool is CalTopo. Why does it matter to know what avalanche terrain is and what to look for? Again, this is the piece of the puzzle that we have control over. We can control what terrain we choose for the day and where we're going and how we're traveling through it. We don't have control over the weather. We don't have control over, the weather is the biggest thing that we don't have control over. So us being able to control the terrain we're in, that's our best way to try and decrease our chances of being caught in an avalanche. And also sometimes skiing or riding that 20 degree slope or 25 degree slope can be really fun. But again, emphasizing that we do really want to be aware of what's above us. And as we're in the field, asking ourselves this question, what is above me? What's around me? Is there anything that could slide? And just having that situational awareness. And Annie added a few more resources too in the chat box of different mapping and tools that you can use also, as well as a link to the Utah Avalanche Center that has some more information on different apps that we like to use in the field. So like they said in the video too, is we want to be doing our best to exposing one person at a time or riding one person at a time on the slope. This way, one, our group can see them and we can have eyes on. So if something were to happen, and also we don't want to put too many people in risk at once. So when you look at this photo here, you can just see how all these people are just potentially exposed to this overhead hazard. So as also, I just want to make a little side note here, as the backcountry is getting more crowded and side country, is we do also just want to be aware. And I think part of getting that picture is also what people are around us and working with other groups in the backcountry and being polite to them so that we don't end up in a situation like this, where if this person maybe made a wrong move, it could impact everyone here. So trying to be courteous to the other users out there. And sometimes too, it's not always that first person or the second person that's on a slope. Sometimes it can be the sixth or seventh person on a slope that can trigger that avalanche. And a great video that shows that is if you look up on YouTube, it's called The Seventh Skier. And it's a video of There's 6 tracks and it's the 7th person on a slope that just hits that sweet spot and wipes out the entire slope. So again, we want to just be aware of that terrain. What is avalanche terrain? When are days to go in avalanche terrain? And really starting to recognize what does 30 degrees look like and above, and really calibrating our eye for that. And then having a plan when we go out, and again, using that in conjunction, making that plan with the forecast, with what the experts are telling us that they know for that day. But again, once we're out, just being observant and looking around. When we're skiing and riding inbounds, Ski Patrol is going out and they're actually thinking about and looking, where can we set up avalanches? So they have the exact opposite job of me as a ski guide. I'm trying to go out and I'm trying to avoid avalanches. Ski Patrol is trying to go out and they are intentionally trying to safely, to the best of their ability, set off avalanches and control that inbounds terrain. And they can do that with explosives, as you can see in these photos, which is also a nice tool. When you are leaving the ski area boundaries, going out the gates, then you're going into the backcountry. It's no longer controlled out there. If you find yourself skiing or riding in Europe, they use different terminology, and it's important if you're in Europe and or outside of the North America, really, to understand what is controlled and what isn't controlled. In Europe, they use the term on piste, which that is controlled. Off piste is not necessarily controlled by Ski Patrol. So again, that's just a difference to know in the US versus Europe. In the US, Ski Patrol does their best to mitigate and control for avalanches inbounds. Once you leave the resort gates, we want to make sure that you understand that you are stepping into that backcountry. And that's when you want to make sure that you're applying all of these skills and tools. This is just another example of, here is that ski area boundary line. And this is just outside the ski area. And this was where an avalanche started. And I believe this photo was taken from Baldy. So this is just showing how in Europe, the signs might not always be in English, but just knowing that they do control differently in Europe versus the US, and really outside of the US. Off-piste does not necessarily mean it's controlled. You might not always see those signs in English. A foundation that I'm personally involved with is called the Brass Foundation. And the Brass Foundation was created because 2 boys that were on the US ski team died in an avalanche in Austria while skiing off-piste. They didn't know, their coaches didn't know, they didn't understand that off-piste meant it wasn't controlled. And if you talk to some of the other boys that were involved in that accident that day that did survive, they said if they had just known that it wasn't controlled, they never would have been there on a powder day in the first place. And so this is something that we are really trying to educate people on more and more. So when we're out in the field, now that we have an idea of what avalanche terrain is, we've read the forecasters, but like they mentioned in that video on forecasting, is avalanche forecasters, they're forecasting for large areas. They do their best, but there are some things that if we are seeing this in the field, these are these 5 red flags that we want to go over, that if you're seeing this, that is a great time to say, whoa, something has changed, or I'm not loving this. It might be time to head back to the car, or we really need to be reevaluating our plans and thinking about where we are with that terrain. So one of those is if you are out and you are seeing recent avalanches, well, that's the mountain screaming in your face. They are saying avalanches are happening. And so we really want to be aware, right? If you look at this photo on the right, these people are on the ridge. This is an avalanche that likely they triggered. And maybe they want to just go right back down that ridge because they're seeing avalanches happen. Like I was saying earlier, that message that Ethan Davis, one of the forecasters, wanted me to pass along tonight is in the past couple of days, we have been seeing recent avalanche activity. And so again, that is the mountain screaming at us that something has changed this week. We've added more snow, we've added wind into the equation here. And basically, we know that the conditions have changed. And so we want to be stepping back a little bit. So if we're seeing recent avalanches, that is a sign that more avalanches might be happening. And we want to definitely take note of that. If we see shooting cracks or get this big collapse, that's also the mountain screaming in our face. Basically, when that happens, we've created an avalanche. It's just in terrain that's below 30 degrees, so it's not steep enough for it to have gravity working with it, for it to go anywhere. But if we're seeing those shooting cracks or collapses, it's an indication that if we got, or that shooting crack went out to 30 degrees, that an avalanche would happen. So again, we want to be very aware if we're seeing those cracks or collapsing. If we're seeing wind drifted snow, that's another red flag that we want to be aware of. This is another thing that's really easy to observe, but wind can play a huge role in creating avalanche hazard. And it's transporting snow and adding weight to the snowpack. So we really want to pay attention to where that snow is moving. And like we are seeing currently in our problem right now, is that wind slabs are a problem in our valley. So again, we just want to be aware whenever we're seeing like wind transporting snow, that is another red flag. And then heavy snowfall or rain. So if we're getting lots of snow and or rain, then that's again adding that weight to the snowpack. It takes a little bit of time for snowpack to adjust to that added weight. So that is another indication, okay, the avalanche hazard is increasing, something is changing. And especially if we're getting heavy snowfall or rain in a short period of time, then it's changing quickly. The snowpack needs time to adjust to that new load. So that's another sign of, whoa, we want to like dial it back, make sure we're in good terrain, make sure there's nothing big above us. That's again, that mountain's just screaming at us to pay attention. And then rapid rising temperature. So again, with the snowpack that we have currently, and with our temperatures, it's colder this time of year than it typically is. That first couple warm days, especially in the Wood River Valley forecasting zone, we really want to be aware of that. The avalanche hazard might be increasing when we get those like rising temperatures. That's for us in the snowpack right now. But just in general, anytime we see rapidly rising temperatures, we see those roller balls. That's usually an indication that stuff's warming up. We might start to see wet slides coming soon. So again, rapid change, whether it's heavy snowfall or rain, wind drifted snow, or rising temperatures, those are all things that we really want to be paying attention to, as well as recent avalanches or getting that cracking and collapsing. So those are all really important things that every time you're going out, if you see any of those, share that with your group. Reevaluate, what terrain am I in? Am I in avalanche terrain? Is there anything big above me that I need to be paying attention to? And if so, how can we adjust our plan and dial things back so that we make it out safely? So tonight we've gone through the 4 get the points. Get the forecast. You can do that by going to sawtoothavalanche.com. You can also do that by going to avalanche.org in the US. That's a great resource. Really recommend like reading through the entire avalanche forecast and just becoming familiar with that terminology. There's some great resources to start speaking that language. Get the gear, practice with that avalanche transceiver, shovel and probe, practice with your partners with that gear, because if something were to happen, they're part of your backcountry rescue team. get that training, attend more lectures like this. Hopefully you can join for some field sessions, take a level 1 avalanche course, attend Digging Deeper series. There's so many great tools out there to continue to get avalanche training. Hire a guide for a day. There's lots of ways to just keep getting that training and ways to continue to be curious. And then get that picture when you're going out, starting to figure out, what does avalanche terrain look like? Is this over 30 degrees? Do we have any of those red flags? Am I seeing recent avalanches? Am I getting that cracking and collapsing? Do we have wind drifted snow? Do we have heavy snowfall or rain? Or do we have rapidly rising temperatures? Or did something change and it just doesn't feel right? Those are times to share that with the people you're out with and figure out, what can we do so that we can all come back safely and feel good about our plan. So where do you go from here? Keep being curious. So opportunities, and we've talked about a lot of these throughout these presentations. But these are just some ideas, practice at the Beacon Park, take an avalanche course, look at those weekend updates that the Avalanche forecast or the Avalanche Center is putting out. They put those out both on the Sawtooth Avalanche Center website and on social media. Those are great ways to hear from the forecasters themselves and to help paint a little bit more color around that avalanche forecast. And then look at those introduction to avalanche field days. The best way to register is if you go to that sawtoothavalanche.com, click on that education tab, and under upcoming classes, not only are you going to see opportunities for field days in there, but you're also going to see some of the other classes and lectures and different opportunities coming up. Again, a big thank you. If you think of questions now, or maybe something pops up a day or two, a week or two from now, please email us at education@sawtoothavalanche.com. If you like this presentation tonight or want to support the Avalanche Center, there's also ways that you can go on and donate to the Sawtooth Avalanche Center. And with that, before I take any questions, just again, a big thank you for everyone taking time out of their evening tonight to join for this presentation. Before we open it up to questions, I am going to turn it over to Annie, who's the education coordinator, again, to just let her say any final words.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for coming tonight, and a huge thanks to Lindsay. Before we take kind of final questions, again, this is just what we hope you see as the first step in sort of the lifelong pursuit of learning about snow and avalanches and how to manage that risk. You can take what you've heard and seen tonight and literally, I won't say get your hands dirty, maybe get your hands snowy this weekend. Saturday at Rotorun at 4 o'clock. We'll be there. No need to sign up, just show up. And then this Sunday's our final field day of the year. And it's helpful if people pre-register for that. And you can do that on sawtoothavalanche.com by clicking on the event page for this Sunday's Intro to Avalanches field day. And I think that's what I got.
Thanks, Annie. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to put in the chat, I will